Hello and welcome. This is Chess 24. This is the Gashimov Memorial, and this is reigning Russian champion.
About to be deaf in about half an hour, seemingly.
Yeah, apparently I'm quite vocal on air. Apologies for that. But I'm delighted to be joined here by Grandmaster Peter Svidler, who's going to help me navigate through these very muddy waters.
I will do my best.
Of today's games. For all of you who've just joined us, if you don't know, this is round 3 of the Gashimov Memorial, of course, a very important tournament in memory of the late Vugar Gashimov, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year. And we've got a fantastic field. And so far, if you haven't seen what has happened, well, you've missed out on already, I would say, 1/3 of what we can call the Carlson show. I don't think that's unfair to say so far, is it?
Not at all. I'm just somewhat wondering about the 1/3 bit, but...
Well, it's round 3. Sorry, there are 10 rounds.
Yeah.
Let's call it a quarter, and I'll be safe. It might not even be that.
Okay.
But so far, Magnus Carlsen on 2 out of 2, thrashing the field. Yesterday gave Hikaru Nakamura a slow beating.
That was an impressive game, I thought, because we began by saying this is not very much, and they both should be fairly happy out of the opening, and then it just gradually got worse and worse and worse for Hikaru, and it never really looked at any point like he was going to equalize.
And the others just haven't really impressed so far, have they?
Not very much, and it has been somewhat dry. I'm sure it will liven up as people get tired and as results come in and force people perhaps to play somewhat more openly. But in particular, yesterday was a dryish round. Apart from the Carlson Nakamura show, there wasn't much excitement. But in a field as young and as exciting as this, I'm sure we will have our bloodshed.
We do like
plenty later on.
We do like a bit of bloodshed. For all of you who don't know, you are also you're in great hands here, I suppose, because we are the most interactive broadcast to be showing this tournament, I suppose.
We are striving to be, anyway.
Striving to be. We are heavily reliant on you guys telling us what you love about what's going on, your opinions of the games, etc., etc. Please get in touch with us using Twitter via the hashtag C24Live. We will be picking out the best tweets. We want to hear from you. That is a big part of what we do. And of course, please ask Grandmaster Peter Svidler. He is here for a few days. Make use of it. Ask him some questions. Mostly chess related, I suppose, but even if not, if they're cricket related...
Finally I have a co-host who can at least support the conversation.
I can support the cricket conversation, but unfortunately, as you already know, Peter, I'm not a Mickey Adams. I can't talk to you all day about cricket. I am
nor should you, but at least you know the vocabulary.
I know the vocabulary.
To a degree.
To a degree, I can. Well, let's see if we reach a silly point at some point.
It's not.
Can I do a silly point? Is that that's? Did that work? Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with anything.
Okay.
I'm a very easygoing person. Anyways,
let's get to the games.
Yeah, maybe some chess is in order.
Chess is in order. Should we go to this guy, I don't know, Carlson, I think he's called?
Yeah, that seems like a decent bet. The middle one is the one you're looking for.
Yeah. Black against Karjakin today.
Yeah, no, a somewhat interesting choice by Sergei, because he is, I think, his natural inclination is to play positions without risk, and he's exceptionally strong in positions with positional. I'm overusing this word today. If he gets pressure without risk, we all like positions where you don't really run the risk of losing, but playing 4f3 against the Nimzo, perhaps the sharpest line against the Nimzo in existence, is an interesting choice. But I guess this choice is somewhat influenced by the game Hikaru should have won against Magnus in Zurich, where Magnus did not particularly impress in his treatment of this position. But I'm sure he's looked at this variation since, so it will be interesting to see what transpires from here.
Well,
and we have some moves actually.
We do. We had f3. So, and also for all of you who don't know, this move featured in the World Championship match between Viciana and Magnus Carlsen, where Magnus clinched the title, essentially.
Yeah, that's true. But by that point, Vichy absolutely had to play something
but
sharp.
Vichy
and
was
double
doing
it.
all right in that game, I think.
Yeah, clearly he was. I mean, I think a lot of people dedicated a lot of time to analyzing what was going on in that game. It was a very, very complex game. Even with the help of machines, it's not entirely clear what was happening. But I think some analysis suggested that with precise play, Vichy may have even been winning at one point.
Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Well, Magnus Carlsen, that's not the only move here.
No, obviously after f3 you can play d5, c5. There's a number of moves black can choose. Castles is one of the main ones, though, and I think this is what Karjakin played himself in the candidates against Mamedyarov, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And here Sergei played a3. I think maybe Shakrihar played e4, but once again, I'm a bit hazy on the details.
I think that was Mamedyarov Aronian, or
I think it went d4, c5, d5, b5.
that was another game. Yeah,
I think that was Mamedyarov Karjakin, but once again, I may be slightly hazy on the move orders. I'm sure they reached that position, but maybe they reached it via c5, but maybe
yeah,
not.
I think that was reached via
No, but
c5.
at c5, I think they reply a3. They don't play d5 there.
Oh, okay.
So I think, let me have that for a second. I think it went e4, c5, d5, b5, e5, knight e8, and possibly f4 here, something like that. And Sergei was very soon considerably better as black. So this may explain why he himself in this position did not play e4 and went instead for a3, to which Magnus replied by taking and going knight h5. This is a well-known idea in this position. You create a threat of queen h4 check, obviously. White normally replies by going knight h3, and now you can play f5, stopping, at least for now, stopping the expansion in the center and hoping to play behind this pawn, so to speak. Use this pawn as a kind of a wave breaker and play behind it. I don't know, b6, bishop a6, or perhaps d6, e5. There are many plans available for black. On the other hand, white has two bishops, and if he does manage to sort of finish development and play e4 at an opportune moment, he will have a very nice, potentially attacking position.
I had a very bad experience in this line with black a few years ago against none other than Gawain Jones in this exact position, and I can't quite remember how the game went. So any of you guys there I think I got crushed quite quickly with black. I had very good experience though with knight e8, which is the other move in this position.
Yeah,
similar idea.
Good thing about the Zemish Nimzo Indian is that there's a variety of plans available to both sides, and the play becomes very, very sharp and very interesting in a lot of cases, because I guess you need to point out, basically, this is strategically very risky for white, because if he doesn't achieve anything in the center on the king side, the pawn on c4, after a typical Nimzo plan of, let's say, b6, bishop a6, knight c6, knight a5, the pawn on c4 is very, very difficult to defend eventually if nothing happens on the other side of the board. So white needs to be very fast in creating some play on the king side and in the center, otherwise he will be strategically in a lot of trouble. Karjakin is thinking after knight h3, f5, so...
So there are a few moves. E3 is.
We'll see how that goes. Let's briefly check out what's going on in the other games.
There is a game that you might know something about.
Yeah, I was about to start with that one.
Should we go from the beginning, just to?
I guess, yeah.
Because it's interesting the move order here.
Yeah, it's somewhat interesting. Yeah, in a game between Radjabov and Caruana, Radjabov started by knight f3, and Caruana went knight f6 and c5, which is, I think, currently the trends. Somewhat shifted to this. I mean, people who wanted to play the Grunfeld used to automatically play g6 in this position instead of c5. Myself included, I played exclusively g6 in this position for a number of years, and d5 after knight c3. And there is a lot of theory associated with this position by now. Lots and lots of theory. White has a variety of options here. Queen a4 check immediately. C takes d5 and queen a4 check. C takes d5 and queen b3. Many ways of avoiding the Grunfeld type positions. But now I think that it's more fashionable to play c5 and after knight c3 play d5 here, trying to get the Grunfeld positions if white wants, as did happen in this game, cd5, knight d5. In this position, white can play d4 transposing to more or less the classical Grunfeld. Or white once again can switch to there's e4 in this position.
E4, G3.
There's g3. There's lots of options available to white once again if he doesn't want the Grunfeld. But apparently Teimour is not really against this idea since he went d4 and knight c3, bc3, g6. Once again, if you don't want the classical Grunfeld, you can play e3 here. There are subtle differences because obviously the bishop on g7 is much less potent because the pawn on d4 is so much better protected, but it's obviously less active. So e4 bishop g7 transposes to Grunfeld proper, rook b1, castles, bishop e2. This is a very I wanted to say a very popular line, but the height of its popularity was, I think, the mid-90s, and then something very strange happened. Black found some ways to equalize. I think in the late 90s it was doing very, very well. And then in the early noughties, I'm never quite sure.
The noughties.
The noughties, yeah. Some ideas were found for white. And as a black player in this position, I became somewhat worried and told myself I need to start sort of looking at this all over again. And then it disappeared. And it hasn't been played at a top level for years and years, for no reason that I could see, honestly, because there were some games played very early in the new millennium by Sergei and others, which looked to me like they were very promising for white. And yet, due to some strange quirk of fashion, it completely disappeared from top-level chess. And it's making a return in a big way in the past couple of years due to efforts of Levon started playing it, which I think influenced it a lot. And also other people picked up the mantle. And you now see a lot of rook b1 yet again, which for me as a Grunfeld player is not really good news because this line has always been very, very challenging for black. And in most variations here, you need to show very, very good memory to make a draw.
Right.
And you almost never have any winning chances, which is not something you want as a Grunfeld player, but such is life. Game continued, cd4, check, bishop d2, queen a2, castles. This is obviously the tabia of the rook b1 line. I myself played b6 against Levon in the candidates. This is a new attempt to avoid all the mainline theory after bishop g4. But Fabiano seems to be happy with the positions arising after bishop g4. We'll see what Teimour means in this position. He played it against me in the London candidates.
He went bishop g5 against you.
He went bishop g5 there, and he took on b7, I think, in a number of games since. I think he played rook b7 once again against me in Stavanger in 2013. Rook takes b7, I think, is sort of solved by now. I was very surprised when this move made a reappearance. But bishop e3 and bishop g5, I think, are still alive, and I expect him to make one of those two moves. But we'll see what Teimour means here. And this is a game I can actually give somewhat informed commentary on.
You can give very informed commentary on every game. And actually, for all of you guys who didn't know, you should know already, but the most comprehensive series ever produced or available to the public on the Grunfeld.
Well, in video format.
In video format, but I would, let's just say in general, is available on Chess24. If you go to chess24.com, become a premium member, you can get over 12 hours worth of in-depth analysis of the Grunfeld. It's a total repertoire by none other than the world's leading expert.
I did try to make it as comprehensive and as interesting as possible, but
it is. Trust me, I've looked at it as well, and it is brilliant. And if you're a Grunfeld player,
thank you, Lawrence,
or looking to be a Grunfeld player, you have to get it. It's an absolute bargain. Anyway, let's go on to the next. We'll come back to Karth's tweet in a minute when we go back to that game. But
we've seen this tweet and we will address it. But let's briefly cover the last game of the round between Mamedyarov and Nakamura. Nakamura is white here. This has been a Karjakin. Once again, d4, d5, e5 is perhaps the most popular reply to the Kara these days. I mean, some people still play knight c3, knight d2, and Vishy is, I think, one of the biggest proponents of that, and he played a very nice game against Karjakin and the candidates until he missed something in the calculations and went for a draw finally. But I mean, up to a point, he was playing an exemplary game. But e5 is, I think, the more popular and the more topical reply to the Kara these days. Bishop f5, knight f3, e6, bishop e2 is the supposed main line. And now Shakrihar played what I think is, well, it's hard to say what's the most critical, but this is the most testing line for white, c5 and queen b6, because I think this is more or less the only line in this position which has the potential of giving black chances for an advantage if white goes wrong. Because there are a lot of crazy positions where knight c3 is the main move, and this has been played. And here, after knight c6, basically there are positions here where black just completely gives up the rook on a8. The main line, as it stands right now, goes castles, queen takes b2, and now queen e1, a very sneaky little move. The reason for queen e1 is that after knight b5, black just goes c4. This is the whole point of this setup is that black reacts to knight b5 by just playing c4, giving up this rook on a8 altogether, I think taking with the bishop on c2 currently. And the knight on a8 will eventually get lost. And black will end up with a very, very solid pawn structure, passers on the queen side, which will be tremendous. And if white doesn't manage to get anywhere whilst black is finishing his development, black will be better in this position. I'm not sure if he's better already, but very, very precise play is required from white here. So after queen e1, once again, as things stand right now, I think black is holding. But a lot of knowledge is involved in playing this position. You need to be very, very well prepared. And as I've been saying all this, Hikaru took on c5, which is, I think, a minor, sort of a sideline to the castle on move 8. And after bishop takes c5, bishop takes c5. As a side note, you can play knight a4, but you don't really win any material because queen a5 check comes in. And after bishop d2, I suppose bishop b4, c3, and the bishop will go back.
Hold on, can't you win that knight on a4? Or am I going?
Well,
after biship d2, I mean.
Huh? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm going crazy here. Yeah, you can just take on a4. Yeah. That I had an inkling.
Don't worry, I'm here. I'm here for those ones.
Yeah.
It's hard doing this job. People don't understand. You know, we blunder pieces all the time.
It is hard, but still, I had an inkling earlier today that this will not be my brightest day somehow, and we're already seeing evidence of that. Anyway, bishop c5, queen c5, knight b5, and here it looks as if white created some threats, but actually I think after king f8, black is quite comfortable here because the pawn on e5 is rather weak, and let's say, I don't know, knight bg4, knight g7, or perhaps bishop g4, but I like knight g7. The king on f8 is of course a bit of a nuisance, but it will eventually get out by playing, let's say, g6, king g7, and white will have to pay constant attention to this pawn on e5, let's say, I don't know, castles, bishop e4 or bishop g4, I'm not quite sure. And black is aiming to trade his bishop for the knight on f3, and then play, let's say, g6, king g7, or maybe even knight g6,
king e7,
king e7, if he feels particularly frisky. And I think this is supposed to be fine for black. We'll see what transpires, but this is what I can remember about this position off the top of my head. So let's return to Magnus and address the question.
Yeah, let's get the question back up, please.
What's the point of f3, we were asked. The point of f3 is that Bishop b4 is a move which prevents white from playing e4. There's a big fight going on over the fate of the e4 square. White wants to occupy as much of the center as possible, and black wants to prevent it. So f3 quite obviously is a move aimed to play e4 later on. And the way the game continued shows that black is quite eager not to allow this to happen. This is why knight h5 and f5 is such a principled reaction in a way, because you stop the one idea white would very much like to realize. Since then, Sergei played e3, to which Magnus replied d6. As I mentioned, this is one of the two most obvious plans in this position. One is going for the c-pawn straight away, and the other is playing d6 and e5, sort of safeguarding your central situation, and only then deciding where pieces go. Actually, I'm somewhat surprised at e3. I have to say that, once again, I looked at this line when I was preparing for the London candidates. The details are somewhat hazy in my mind.
Knight f2, I think, might be.
But I think you're supposed to play either knight f2 or maybe even include bishop g5 somewhere, and try and play for something quicker than what Sergei is attempting here. Bishop g5, queen e8, and maybe even e4 straight away, trying to get e4, bishop d3 short castle as soon as possible, and at least to make black work for the center, because e3, d6 looks to me like white is allowing black too much freedom in the center. Game could continue something like bishop d3, black will play, I don't know, e5 immediately, for instance. Castles, knight, c6. The other knight will return to f6, queen e7. Black is, I think, incredibly comfortable here, because the pawns on e5 and f5 safeguard him against any kind of initiative on the king side.
Even f4 here might be an idea, right?
Yeah, well, if white does nothing, eventually f4 will come.
Knight f2, queen h4, knight g3, these kinds of ideas.
Yeah, I mean, white will put the knight on f2, and I'm not sure you want to play f4 unprepared, but even simply knight f6, b6, bishop a6, knight a5, eventually you have to pay attention to the f5 pawn, but it's possible to organize your pieces in such a way that it will not be such a huge problem. And more importantly, what's white's plan here?
That's the question, isn't it?
I'm not quite sure what the future is for the bishop on c1. And I think black should be very, very comfortable here. I quite like black's position. But we'll see what Sergei's ideas on the subject are, because it's very difficult to imagine that he played f3 and a3 and went for this line with absolutely no preparation for knight h5 and f5, which is a reasonably well-known reaction and should not really be surprising to you if you choose to play this line with white. I remember before London we paid quite close attention to this, because it's a challenging reaction which if you're very slow, if you do nothing for a while, you run the risk of actually ending up in a slightly worse position.
So you did this before London and not before Hansi? What was the difference?
I had to switch to other things between London and Hunty, because in London I think people were caught somewhat unawares by my sudden 1d4 repertoire, and I could count on them not really expecting me A, to know very much, and B, in many openings basically they could maybe guess I will yet again play d4, but they had no idea what I will do later. And since then I've shown some, if not most, of what I meant in many openings there. And once people know what to prepare for, I mean, d4 is not a solution to chess. I mean, it's a possible first move, but it's not as if it's, you know, without its problems. Obviously, you know, a lot of the, not a lot, but some discussion on air yesterday was focused on the fact that the Berlin makes people gravitate sort of towards other moves and play e4 less. But it's not as if, let's say, the Slav or the Nimzo are such, you know, treasure troves of fun attacking positions. Knight F2 was played in Jones Trent British Championships in 2009.
Thanks for that tweet, Gawain.
Yeah.
Nice to know you're watching. That's Grandmaster Gawain Jones, a British champion himself numerous times, and it was 8 Knight F2.
Yeah.
So instead of E3, I remember.
I really think I mean, once you play E3, you've kind of given up on any proper ambition here. You need to try and play E4 in one go. Otherwise, previous play I mean, it makes it all a bit timid if you go E3. But once again, we'll see how it goes. Shakrihar did recapture on C5, and now Hikaru is thinking. Teimour is still thinking after Bishop G4,
Wow.
which is a little bit funny, but.
Do you think? Well, I mean, Fabiano is quite a well-known Grunfeld player as well, isn't he? I mean,
Fabiano tends to know things about most openings, but yeah, I mean, this should not be a surprise.
Yeah.
Especially considering, as I've mentioned, I mean, if you don't want the Grunfeld, you have other options here. You can play G3 as Teimour himself played against me in Tromsø during the World Cup, maybe via a slightly different move order, but maybe even from this move order. I can't quite remember. And it's not as if he's completely defenseless here against the Grunfeld, so to speak. And if you do opt for the Grunfeld, why are you surprised by the absolute main line? But we're speculating here. It's we'll see.
So tell us, Peter, you obviously this year didn't quite go to plan in
not exactly, no.
It was a I have to admit, commentating on it every day, it was an interesting tournament to watch. But what are your kind of objectives now that tournament has finished? Are you just going to keep on playing? I know you've got Norway Chess coming up.
Yeah, I'm obviously not quitting, but I need to sort of recalibrate my plans and expectations somewhat, because one thing I will say about Hunty is that, you know, this time I don't think anyone can doubt that I gave it a shot, because in London I finished on shared third, scored +2, won a game against Magnus. All those things are very nice, and I'm proud of them in their own way, but I don't think, you can't really describe my performance there as actually challenging for the qualification spot. I won a lot of games in the second half of the tournament when I was completely out of the running. They were nice games, and once again, there's nothing wrong with winning games against very high level opposition. but I never really felt, from the moment I did not win that game against Boris, I didn't really feel like I was challenging for the actual qualification spot. Whereas I scored -1 this time, but maybe it looked differently from the outside. But it seemed to me like I was, at least for some part of the tournament, an honest challenger for the qualification. It did not go according to plan at all. I mean, there were many enforced mistakes which cost me dearly, but I did give it an honest shot. And now that that's gone, I have some tournaments, very strong, interesting tournaments to look forward to. But in terms of where the career is going, I will need to think about that. But we'll see.
You're still enjoying your chess, though, aren't you?
Yeah, and actually this is the one positive from Hunty. I mean, it turns out I can play every single game for a win, and it's fun, although it's kind of heartbreaking when it goes wrong. But I am trying new things at my, senile age.
Please, come on. You're a young man, Peter. I want you to keep on going, because I love your style, and I love your, I love your determination to keep on winning, despite the setbacks. So I think you got to do it. I think you got to keep on going.
I am going to keep on going.
You've got Norway Chess very quickly.
For a while yet. Yeah, Norway Chess starts in early June, and then
the Olympiad.
And then the Olympiad is swimming unpeaked, and then European clubs, and autumn tends to be quite busy. Anyway, Teimour did take on.
Teimour took on B7.
Yeah, he took on B7, which is, I mean, it's a very safe move, and not that other moves here run much of a risk for white of losing. But Rook B7, as I said, I am very surprised. I'm not quite sure what people still mean in this line, to be honest, because I think more than one almost forced equality has been shown. Maybe there are some novelties which can change the evaluation of some of the sidelines here. But I'm actually quite eager to see this game because I honestly don't know what you can possibly mean in this position.
So when you
white.
say there are various routes to equality, show me what the...
Well, the main line, as of now, takes. No, you need to take this pawn right away. And now I think e5 you're supposed to play something like knight a6. I think. I'm maybe slightly hazy on this, but I think knight a6 is very strong. If rook e7, you just go rook e8, and the pawn on e5 will drop. The main move here is bishop b4. And in this position, people have been playing rook d8 with success. Black has been holding here quite comfortably, I think, in the recent games. And I myself played knight c6, bishop e7, rook e8 against Teimour in Stavanger, and also held reasonably comfortably. And I'm not aware of any refutation. If Teimour shows a refutation here, it will mean that I will need to update my videos. Because I am recommending this in the
You're
video.
recommending
this?
Okay.
I think this is what I'm recommending in the videos. I mean, rook b8 gets an honorable mention, but I honestly see nothing wrong with this either. And if for some reason white does get somewhere here, I'm very, very curious to see how. Anyway, we'll see. I mean, I expect bishop f3 and bishop d4 to happen in short order because honestly, after rook b7, there isn't much else. Knight e6, d5 is a very, very improved version for white of many, many other things. I mean, normally you don't get a position as good as this here with white. So you need to immediately destroy at least, you know, one bit of this center and trade some pieces off. And then I'll be watching with great interest because I assumed this line was half dead, but people seem to be still returning to it, and I honestly don't know why.
How will we haven't seen Teimour for a while?
Yeah, that's true.
Tell us about you. You obviously know him a lot better than I do. What's going on with Teimour? He had a very difficult year last year.
Yeah, that's you know, you can say that quite safely. He had a horrendous year. I mean, he began the year as part
world
of
number 4.
Yeah, world number 4 or 5. I'm not entirely sure, but he was 2790, I think. He used to lose maybe 2-3 games a year for many years running. He was an extremely solid, extremely confident player, and many people actually thought he was a reasonable, you know, dark horse bet on London. And London went horrendously.
It went horrendously.
Yeah, it went, you know, there's no other word to describe it. And the rest of the year did not particularly impress either. And it was very, very strange because he's obviously a very, very good player. And it's not entirely clear what happened to him. I have no insight as to what did happen. Obviously, something must have happened because
you know, he became a father, didn't he?
Yes, but I don't really buy that. I mean, I won every single tournament in 2002, 2003 after I mean, it should not really make you depressed and unable to play, as far as I can see. I mean, I don't want to speculate on people's personal lives, especially, you know, people I know nothing about, to be honest, at least about their personal lives. But you know, citing a new child as a reason for bad play is to me somewhat strange. And also, in London, he wasn't yet a dad. Right. So I really don't know, and I think we should stop speculating on that particular subject. What I will say is that you don't become a bad player overnight. So something must have happened to make him, I don't know, somewhat less interested in chess or whatever. I have no idea what that is. And for all his fans out there, we hope that he is now back to...
Is this his first tournament this year? I can't recall him playing another, or at least a super tournament. Did he play in the Russian Team Championships?
No.
No, he didn't.
I don't recall him playing anywhere. No, I think somebody quoted something to me during either yesterday's or the first round broadcast that he was quoted saying that he spent the past 6 months preparing, and he is now, you know, very booked up and very ready to play at this level yet again, and we'll see. We all hope so, because something very, very weird happened to a guy who was, a legitimate pretender. I mean, not pretender is a Russian word. A contender for all the top.
I think you can say pretender, actually.
Maybe, yeah.
Pretender to the throne, Macaulay.
Yeah. Oh yes.
You happy with that?
Pretender. Anyways,
we've got a little bio up there for you guys. Born in 1987 in Baku, Azerbaijan. Of course, he's playing at home, and he got to 27.93 in November 2012.
You don't get to a rating as high as that by fluking it. He was playing exceptionally good, exceptionally solid chess. And then something went wrong somewhere.
Well, he's now rated 27.13, so he's lost 80 points.
Yeah.
That's a chunk, isn't it?
And that's basically 1 year.
Wow.
That's from London to autumn, and that is a very, very sheer drop.
Wow.
For somebody of his quality, and I don't know. I'm running out of things of ways to say this, but I mean, he is an exceptionally strong player who for some reason had an exceptionally bad year. I have no idea why, and let's see how he does here.
I remember seeing Teimour Radjabov when I was in short pants is not really the right word, but the first ever European Championship I played in for my age group, because he's just a year. Well, he used to play, I think, just because he was so good. He crushed the field, and I remember thinking, this Radjabov kid, he's going to be good one day. So I have faith. I have faith that he's going to make a bit of a comeback this year. Yeah. And he's played your move, Peter.
Yeah, no, I do know a little bit about this line. Would have been strange if I didn't guess any moves at all here. So we have the position I described on this board, and a position I described on this board as well. So I'm doing.
You're on fire.
Apart from the blunder of a knight on a4 in one move, I'm doing.
It's only a knight.
Yeah, it's only a.
You got two of them.
Yeah, very true, very true. So
a bit like kidneys. Is that right?
To a degree, yeah. To a degree. Anyway, I wouldn't really compare them
probably not
so directly, but yeah, there are some parallels in the number of them.
Let's hear some more from you guys at home. Remember, you can get in touch with us.
Let me
Hashtag C24 Live. We want to hear from you. Make sure your tweets are good ones. You've got a great chance to ask Peter Svidler. We've got a genuine elite grandmaster in the house. Please make sure that you're taking advantage of this. You're not asking a patzer like me. You're asking current Russian champion, a guy who has been at the top for over 20 years now. So, well, we've got to move, Peter. Can we return to your game? Because maybe this is it. Maybe.
Yeah, this you mean in
Queen C1, or is that being C?
This is still theory. I think you're supposed to go knight A6, bishop B7, rook DC8 here, followed by knight C5. And this is supposed to be, the huge drawish tendencies in this position. Let's put it like this, because you pretty much will have to take on c5 once the knight appears there, because it's very awkward. It jumps to all those d3 squares and everywhere. So no, this is still very, very mainline theory. I'm curious as to what Teimour means here.
Is there any merit in these lines? I mean, I might sound stupid.
In what sense?
In these lines, I'm going to say, is there any merit in, for example, just playing some stupid move like e5 here, just giving the exchange, and I know it's completely unnecessary, but I'm just looking at the a pawn and the big bishop on d4.
Yes, I mean, if you had the knight, if the knight on b8 was already developed to somewhere like, I don't know, e6 or somewhere, and the pawn was not on a7 but somewhere around even on a5, let alone a4, it would make sense. In this position, you probably will lose the f7 pawn in short order somehow, like queen c1, bishop d1, b3, and there will be threats.
Yeah, just a bit underdeveloped.
You will not complete development. Yeah. I mean, strategically, an exchange sacrifice like this does make sense, but you will never be on time in this particular position.
Okay, interesting to note there. And he has played knight a6, so...
Yeah. No, I mean, we're still following grandmaster practice of recent years. There was a game during the Saloniki Grand Prix between Etienne Bacro and I'm forgetting who was the other player. And there were other games between 2,700 plus players. Rook bishop e7 has been played, so I'm expecting rook dc8. We'll see. I mean... I may be sort of somewhat hasty with those pronouncements, but one way of explaining this choice for Radjabov, especially since I want to point out after bishop g4, the lines starting with bishop g5 and bishop e3 are currently now enjoying a bit of a renaissance. Sergei Karjakin played bishop e3 against me in the Russian superfinal last autumn in the final round, and he did get some edge.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that fun currently for black. It's probably holding, but white managed to find some ideas in those positions, and the fact that he went for this instead, rook a8 is what Fabiano played. This is also possible, but I think mainline theory is rook dca, but I may be wrong. Once again, my own preferred way of treating this is playing knight c6 here, so I'm not quite sure whether rook a8 is a novelty or not. But the idea stays the same. You ignore the fact that d8 is hanging, you will play knight c5 next move. You're happy to swap d8 for b7 because the rook on b7 is a very active piece. And basically, white does have the bishop pair, but the bishop on f3 does not really participate in the game all that much. So, and the pawn on a7 is a trump for any endgame. So generally, black is supposed to be very, very comfortable here. We'll see. And I was about to make a pointless sweeping generalization, which was perhaps despite all the work he has supposedly done for this tournament, perhaps Teimour doesn't feel that comfortable yet going for full-blooded struggles against these people, and he's aiming for somewhat safer positions where he maybe could get a small plus with absolutely zero risk and play on for a bit. But I could be completely wrong. I mean, that's one version of events. But maybe he just found something in this line and is about to demonstrate to us why this is dangerous for black.
Do top players? I mean, I can't really. Well, I do it sometimes, I suppose. This element of bluffing your prep. For example, if you play too quickly and you're banging out the moves in this line, your opponent sits down and thinks, okay, well, he's clearly had a really deep look at this. Do you ever just take your time, even though you've analysed the position lots and you know what the best move is, just to kind of semi-bluff the fact that you might not know it? Or yeah, does that happen at all at top level?
This exists, but mainly I think people do think even in well-known positions, because there was such an explosion of information in let's say the past decade or two, that you need to remember so much stuff that sometimes even if you have repeated your analysis for this particular position before the game, you still need to take some time to make sure you're not mixing up move orders anywhere. And also, this is a reasonably tolerant time control. But let's say when you're playing with the other time control, you see a lot of 90 minutes for 40 moves with increment. Bluffing your way through 15 minutes of your time there unless you're absolutely sure your novelty wins and you really want some position on the board, and you think by thinking you might lure your opponent to certain doom. You're much better off having more time for later in the game than doing that. So I think there's not a lot of it going on.
Interesting. I just played the tournament hour and a half, all moves, plus 30 seconds. And I can tell you what, that is tough. I need my 30 minutes at move 40, because the amount of times I managed that is really quick.
That is extreme. That requires some.
Apparently it's quite normal in Spain, but I didn't realise that in opens and so on. In any case, okay, so queen g5 on the board, and now up to Caruana. So clearly there's a threat, rook on d8. You've got your knight c5 move again. I assume it's possible.
Knight c5 is I think the more obvious choice, because you You hit the rook on b7. You want to bring the knight over to e6, where it will completely cement black's position, and
So I assume you take here, right?
get everything under control.
Something like this, rook b5.
Rook b5, knight e6, I just like for black, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah.
I mean, the queen has no really good squares. I will play rook d7 next move, or rook e8. There are also, you have to pay attention, queen h6, for instance. Let's put this back on the board, knight c5. Knight e6. If you go queen, I don't know, queen h6 also holds, but as an illustration, let's say queen g4. No, even here you have rook d1. Damn, I can't really.
You can't.
But here it sort of works, but not in the way I wanted. This is. But I just wanted to illustrate the fact that you constantly have to pay attention to those ideas of queen takes f2, queen takes f2, and bishop takes f2, and all those things. And generally, I think black is quite comfortable here.
Yeah.
And if bishop d8, knight b7, the bishop has to go back to e7 pretty much, because bishop f6 takes, knight c5, I think should be quite comfortable. I don't really see any problems for black in this position. The queen is about to come back to e6. If you pin the knight, I can play, let's say, queen a3, and the fact that the pawn is still on h2 makes it impossible to maintain the pin along the c file. So bishop e7, and for instance, knight c5 back, once again trying to bring it to either d3 or e6. I think in this position white pretty much has to play queen d5. And this endgame is actually slightly alarming, so I might be looking for a more precise move after bishop e7, but even this is probably holdable. I don't think it's fatal for black as yet, but this would make me a little bit worried as a black player. So maybe I should in this position look for a slightly more accurate option. Maybe start with a5 straight away, or maybe I can even afford to go rook c2 and go into the counter-attack. Because f2 is really not that easily protected. There is queen g3 creating a big threat of queen b8 check though, and a mate on f8, which is a big threat. This needs to be handled carefully, but.
Because that knight on b7, I mean, temporarily it's a bit awkward, isn't it?
There are problems right now for black, but if he manages to solve them somehow, let's say if you imagine in this position the knight on e6, black is just better, I think, because it covers all those squares. Even queen b8 check becomes only one check, and black will, first of all, in this position, only the fact that queen b8, queen f8 is mate stops me from playing rook takes f2. Rook takes f2 would have been winning if not for the fact that we're getting mated first. So black actually has very concrete threats here, and generally speaking, I think black needs to work out the slight discoordination problems he has right now. But with this monster on d4 and material equality and a lot of material coming off, he should not be suffering that much. But we'll see.
Do you think your countryman Sergei Karjakin might be suffering? Do you think he's been caught off guard because he spent so much time?
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised on.
After d6, he's played bishop e2, which looks super passive to me. I mean, it looks.
Well, it looks.
It's a normal move, but it doesn't feel like you're fighting for e4, or it feels like you're just going with the flow rather than.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised by his approach, because, and this is also something we discussed yesterday, and basically it's a bit of a strange, change in approach between his fourth move and his eighth. As early as but by move 4, I thought, yes, this is the correct approach when you play Magnus, because. We spent some time, on our own, and also people were asking us on Twitter yesterday with Jan, discussing whether playing what he played against Magnus was the best choice for Hikaru. Getting a position where Magnus will feel extremely comfortable just shuffling pieces around, looking for small edges, looking for small improvements to his positions, looking for ways to make life somewhat less comfortable for black, and this is something he excels at and also enjoys, I think, quite a lot. And we were discussing whether playing something sharper could have been a better idea, even though we both felt that out of the opening, black should not really have too many problems in the position that Hikaru got. And today I saw Sergei play 4 of 3, and I thought, yes, this is exactly what he should be doing, because positions he will get in this line are very sharp, very unbalanced, and may not be that good for white objectively, but at least in terms of as a concept, this should be how you play Magnus. But then knight h5 f5 happened, and Sergei started thinking and sort of switched to let's finish development, let's not get too much of a hair out of place, so to speak. Let's keep things under wraps and see how this game progresses. And once again, this is Magnus territory.
Yeah, I mean,
you're giving him something he very much likes. You're giving him a very drawn out struggle maneuvering for both sides, where it will be very, very hard for white to create any real threats, and black will just feel very comfortable playing behind this pawn wall. And as a matter of fact, it is white has weaknesses here.
Yeah.
Hikaru did not really have any weaknesses. No. He started to create them at some point because he didn't like where the position was headed. But to begin with, his position was very solid. Here, in fact, structurally, black is better because of the weakness on c4. So I'm not quite sure why this is going the way it's going.
Interesting. Well, we'll soon see. I suppose moves like knight c6, e5, even knight d7. I mean, e5
I like
felt
it.
natural.
Yeah, I like it on c6 more than on d7. Generally, you develop it to c6 because a5 is such a natural square for this knight in this structure.
So if e5, I mean, can I just? I'm going to play around. I think this
check.
is.
You shouldn't take on d8.
I was going to go follow up with f4, but
this I don't. Despite the fact that you win,
you can just put a knight on e4.
Some material. I think white could potentially be. This is bad.
This is bad.
All these pawns are targets now.
Yeah.
What I meant to say is that the immediate e5 may be slightly inaccurate because after d white has queen d5 check, and you don't want to give up the e5 pawn in this way. So you will have to take, and then white undoubles the c pawns. And now let's say knight f6 stopping e4, white plays c4, and the bishop has a fantastic square on b2. This knight is coming to f2, g3. This is suddenly very nice for white. I mean, black is probably still fine after c6, but this is, once again, conceptually, this is not quite right. Which is why I think you want to start by playing either knight f6 or knight c6 so that this never happens. At least that would be my guess.
Nice.
Just briefly,
well, we've had this.
Yeah, we had this on the board 20 minutes ago. They're still following what I suggested would be the natural way to continue for both sides here. I think, generally speaking, black is supposed to be comfortable in this structure, regardless of which pieces come off.
Yeah.
Let's say knight f5, knight f5. Let's say c3. First of all, d4 is a very, very possible move here. But even, I just wanted to show you, structurally, let's say g6, bishop d3, knight e7, castles, king g7. This is okay for white, and you can actually play like this. But even in a position like this, where white got everything he wanted, the pawn on e5 is no longer an issue at all. It will be very well covered by, let's say, rook e1, and you can start some play on the king side. But even in a position like this, black is not doing all that badly. Although here I would take white, but it's not that easy to get here because, as I said, after c3, black has a very valid option of d4, breaking up this setup and threatening the pawn on e5 very, very seriously. It might actually drop off. And if white does not play c3, if white, let's say, starts with castling, knight fd4 becomes a very, very serious option. This is a piece trade black, I think, would very much welcome. Let's say take. I will even take with a queen, take with a knight, and after bishop d3, the pawn on e5 will survive. But this is a very, very comfortable endgame for black. Black is never going to be worse here. Perhaps he's not going to be better, but if anything, I would probably prefer to be black in this position. Not by very much, but I think black is extremely comfortable here. So even getting to here is not that easy. And if you start with castles, as I said, you can play bishop b4, for instance. And now this will be a constant source of worry. Let's say c3, knight g6 creates a very concrete threat to the e5 pawn already. Yes, the king. I mean, with black already castled, with the king on g8 and the rook on f8, white would be in serious trouble potentially here. With the king on f8, of course, this is not going to be worse for white, most likely. But black is doing reasonably well here.
Interesting. Okay, so Mamedyarov looks to be fine. Carlson, well,
we quite like his position as early as move 8 with black, which is alarming for people who want more intrigue in this tournament. To be honest,
yeah.
I mean, we're not making any predictions as to how this game will finish, but the first 2 rounds create an impression he can completely run away with it.
My goodness.
Yeah. So
well, he's not far. I mean, another topic that I know you spoke about yesterday, Peter, and it's going to keep on coming up because it is such a record-breaking topic.
I mean, it really is very interesting if it will happen.
2,900. Nobody has ever got there. Nobody's ever got to where he is now, let alone. But 2,900 is really. That is.
I mean, we try to do some math, which is, early in the morning is not something that is particularly easy, especially with no, hard numbers in front of me. But it seems like getting there in this tournament will require a monumental effort. I mean, he really will need to continue winning almost every single game. I assumed something like +4 or +5 might be enough, but it seems like it's not going to. So he needs, I'm sure somebody out there already calculated what the required result is, but I think he needs upwards of 8 out of 10 to get on 2,900 in this tournament. But first of all, I mean, it might sound slightly outrageous, but it's not entirely, without the realms of possibility, the way things are going here.
Yeah.
And outside the realms of possibility, I guess, not without. There's knocking without, as they used to say in Victorian literature, have they?
Really?
I think so.
Let me put it this way. I'm sure you're more of an expert in Victorian literature than I am. No, that I'm absolutely certain of.
What I mean to say is, the first 2 rounds do not make the idea he will score, let's say, 8 out of 10 in this tournament completely. It does not look impossible. Let's see. I'm pretty sure we've already been informed how much he needs to score here.
Yeah, let's see.
8.5 out of 10 to reach 2,900.7.
Cool. That's a big score. Yeah?
That's what I meant. Upwards of 8 out of 10, and 8.5 out of 10 in this field will have to be.
No, that's outrageous.
Yeah, that's going to be maybe the best tournament result of all time. I mean, some of Kasparov's wins in his glory years were outstanding, and Karpov's Linares comes to mind. But +7, I'm right? Yeah, I am right. +7 in this tournament is going to be the stuff of legend forever.
His Nanjing performance was massive, wasn't it, in 2009? If I'm right, producer.
There have been some Magnus performances as well to rival the Kasparov's domination. Yeah. But I mean, winning this with this score will,
makes me slightly uneasy, actually. There's me struggling against, your grandmasters and trying to get my +3, and then the guy just makes +7 against the worlds. But I just don't
Yeah, okay. I mean, we're a bit, early in the piece to start discuing +7. He's on +2 out, after 2 rounds. He's doing okay.
He's doing all right.
But +7 is some way away yet. But
were he to win today, suddenly his confidence is huge. He's got.
I don't think he has any particular problems with confidence.
No, that's
Lawrence.
true.
I don't think he needs a boost.
He doesn't need a boost.
Judging by how he looked in particular during yesterday's
Oh, that was
game.
hilarious. You saw him sitting.
Yeah, hilarious is one way of describing it. I mean, I have to admit, I'm not a huge fan. I don't think he should. I mean,
you think it's bad etiquette?
I think it shows slightly more, relaxation than is generally accepted. But then again,
would you complain to the arbiter if he did that against you? If he was, his legs out there?
Going, sort of saying I'll
Does it put you off? I mean, does it distract you, him sitting like that?
Somewhat, I think, yeah.
Well, you're going to have to think about this, Peter, because you're going to be playing him in about 2 months. No, less than that. What is it?
Yeah, a month.
In a month and a
month and a bit, yeah.
So,
I mean, people seem to think it's all great fun, and you know the most common reaction I've seen so far was, you know, like a boss, which, you know, it is sort of correct. He is doing it because he feels correctly that he is, well, at least up to now, the boss of this tournament. But I felt it was somewhat odd, but I'm old.
Interesting. All right. Well, I think, as is customary, I don't know how you did it with Jan, but knowing Jan, I know he likes his coffee breaks. I could certainly do with a quick breather. Just briefly, Magnus made a move we did not mention, but it's also a very normal reaction. He wants to sort of fixate. I mean, c5 fixes the pawn on c4 forever, and now he can, you know, start thinking about how to round it up and exterminate it. Exterminate that pawn. Yeah, so c5 just fixing the pawn
knight
on
c6,
c4.
b6, bishop a6, knight a5.
And been seen a million times.
Yes, and also now that the pawn is on f5, it's much harder for white to do anything on the other side.
Wow, look at those pawns. That's quite cute. c5, d6, e6, f5.
Yeah, that's
something
a
quite
very nice,
visually
nice setup. No, I quite like Black's position. I mean, I'm not sure just how good it is, but it's definitely very nice.
Okay, well we've got actually we've got a picture there of Magnus. It's as if he's watching.
No, doing this when he's alone at the board is
okay. Yeah.
Is as I said yesterday, I would get my ears boxed by if I did this. Yeah,
this was yesterday.
If I did this when I was a kid, you know, my coach or my parents.
Who was your coach?
You wouldn't know the name.
Okay.
But I think there were some pictures when he was doing this when Hikaru was at the board, and this is I think pushing it a little bit.
Okay, interesting. All right. Well, anyway, we will be right back in just a few minutes with further coverage of today's round.
The tale of the ancient mariner.
We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
Hello again. We're back.
We're back. We're
usurping your
That's
role.
Fine. I like to be. Yeah. If anybody can usurp me, I want it to be you.
Yeah, thanks. Let's do some of the tweets which came in while we were on break. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing this. Podochenko is asking whether going bishop b2 and then bishop d3 next move in yesterday's round against Hikaru is the same overconfidence as the chair pose, and probably I should stop harping on about the chair and all this. This is kind of extraneous to chess, but no, it's nowhere near the same. Bishop b2, bishop d3, as we discussed on air yesterday, is a very valid way of fighting the black setup, and provoking h6 is beneficial in many cases. As Lawrence himself pointed out before we went on air, it robs black of the option of going bishop g6, so you have to take on d3 straight away, and also in some positions h6 is a target. So nothing he does over the board is done for, or almost nothing. I mean, once again, I'm prone to generalizations, but stuff he does over the board is generally done for good reasons, you know, valid reasons, and not because he feels he needs to shock or you know, distract his opponents. Something else there I wanted to cover. There was a question there. Well, who do we think Carlsen is Carlsen's biggest threat? What do you think, Lawrence? Because we discussed it at length yesterday with Jan, and you can name. Well, I mean, people playing in this tournament, both Fabiano and Hikaru, they will be challenging for the match, and if one of them gets a match, it will be an interesting match. But you do have to say that He is somewhat ahead of the pack right now, and people need to start beating him on a reasonably consistent basis before any of these rivalries we talk up all the time begin making.
I think there's a clear challenger. I think there's a very clear challenger. Frodo Baggins.
Yeah.
What else can I say? No,
we all know who that is. Right?
No, I don't think there is a clear challenger. The problem is at the moment is, as you say, Peter, nobody has managed to just chip away a few wins. Just get on the better end of things against him recently. I can't. Well, at least I can't, because he doesn't lose. I mean, he lost. I know he's lost the odd game. He lost against you and various others in the past few years. Ivanchuk, but I actually can't recall him losing so many games. I suppose you don't.
He doesn't lose very many. Yeah, that's quite clear. Yeah.
So I don't know who the biggest challenger is. There we've got a little bio of him there. Obviously born November 30th, 1990. Only 23 years old.
Yeah, that's a bit scary. That's a bit scary. There was a question some time ago, which I think is a valid one. Is Carlson finally able to get something out of the opening by playing d4 instead of the moves he used to play previously? It does seem like he pays a bit more attention to the opening right now than he used to previously. But I'm not sure this is. I don't think 1d4 is that huge a factor. I just think he pays a bit more attention to this phase of the game, and because of that, he gets better positions than perhaps he used to. But once again, this is not something I think he particularly focuses on. I think his play is based much more on trying to outplay his opponents in perhaps even completely equal positions, and if they are not completely equal, so much the better. But he is not the world's biggest opening specialist, because he doesn't need to be. Which position out of the three currently on the board would you most like to play? Is a question from Felix Kramer.
This one,
I want this position with black, to be honest.
Yeah.
I really like this position with black. I'm not a Nimzo player myself. And I honestly don't know why. I mean, it looks like a fabulous opening when you look at a position like this and you think, I mean, if you can get this every time. But obviously you can't. This is not something you get in every single Nimzo. And just briefly, in this position, f3 was a very ambitious choice by Sergei. If white plays something like queen c2, for instance, here, the same as with almost any other opening these days, black will need to remember quite a lot of theory to equalize, and there will be very few winning chances. But f3, we have to be thankful to Sergei for choosing this, because now we have a game. We have a game with almost no theory, and a game in which they both can show how they understand chess, and we will see who plays better. And it's a nice choice for the spectators, because in many cases after, let's say, queen c2 or knight f3, there is so much knowledge accumulated by now in those positions that in order to avoid mainline theory, which in most cases leads to equal positions these days, you need to seriously jeopardize your chances, especially with black. Anyway, of the three on the board, I would be most likely to get this position with black. Let's put it like this. We're considering my repertoire. This is the one I would probably get, actually, but the one I would most like to get is this one with black. Briefly about this position, yeah. I've been thinking about this because c8 is hanging, and it's not immediately obvious how to protect it. I guess black has to play rook d2 now, maybe. Wow. I'm not sure, but basically the rook is hanging. You cannot play rook c6 because the d8 rook drops, and you can't play rook b8 because the c5 bishop drops. So you need to do something tactical here, and I've been searching for a move in this position, and.
But is the c8 rook hanging? Because after bishop c8, queen takes f2 checks.
I actually pointed this out earlier, and now I've forgotten.
So if you just play a move, I don't know, like.
What do you play?
Well, we need to find.
This actually comes to mind. Yeah.
Bishop b6. Yeah.
I want to play rook c5, driving this this queen away, or perhaps even rook c2 if I feel particularly ambitious.
Yeah.
And rook takes b6, a b6,
wow.
bishop c8, rook c8 is just a draw. This is not particularly exciting. And just to put this on the board, bishop c8 loses to a reasonably well-known motif, queen f2, rook f2, and rook d1 mate. So the rook isn't actually hanging, which makes black's choice that much wider. Obviously, you can even you
I quite like bishop b6.
Yeah, bishop b6 is a nice move, sort of safeguarding your position. Defending the pieces which weren't defended as yet. But I'm sure there are other options.
Is there any way? I mean, I'm trying to think.
Actually, something like. No, I'm coming back to rook d2, and rook d2 is an option, but bishop takes c8. Now we don't have queen f2, so we have to play rook f2, and this is less of a. I mean, it's still a huge threat. Rook takes f1 is mate in 2, and queen takes c5 is obviously impossible because rook g2, rook h2, and queen g2 mate will happen. But
so is rook takes f2 end of game?
There is queen d8 check, but after king g7 you have no more checks. So maybe actually I'm not quite sure white can even parry the threats here. The threats are many and very, very strong. So rook d2 is a legal option here. Maybe white can play something like queen f6, but this is kind of this is kind of courting disaster, because now I think I can maybe take on f2. Yeah. And after king h1 I can maybe, I think, play bishop d4. And the first rank problems, I mean, white can take on f7, take on f7 and take with a b rook, and it probably will be a draw. But black seems to be reasonably safe.
What about queen takes c1? I mean, sorry, queen takes d2.
Queen d2, bishop takes c8. Yes, this is obviously very, very legal. But the bishop is not on d5 yet. With the bishop on d5, this would be a problem for black. But the way pieces are right now, I think I can start running with the a pawn. And the fact that f2 is constantly.
Rook d7, bishop b7, bishop d5.
Rook d7, I will play something like. This is a
just a thought that
this is a serious option. This is a serious option.
Went through my mind.
There is bishop takes f2, but I'm not entirely happy with it because f7 drops in the end.
Yeah.
I can maybe start with queen c5 check, king h1, and take on f7 now, so that you can't take with this rook. But even after rook gf7, this is not fun at all for black, this type of position. Maybe it's holdable, but it's not really very enjoyable. So maybe I should.
I don't know. I mean, it still feels like black should be fine somehow. Right?
Somehow, yeah. But rook d7, bishop b7 is a nice restructuring, obviously. Maybe I can go after the e2 pawn straight away, play something like queen e2. I don't think you can actually defend it.
Yeah, rook b4. Ah, of course I can't even play rook b4. I'm going mad. I can play rook b8. That's
you can
cute.
play rook b8 and bishop b7, but this is kind of
this is goodness.
less fun for white.
Rook c8.
Yeah, rook c8. I can take on f2. I can take on f2 and then take on b7, and I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it is rich, this position.
It's not a dry position, and I wasn't really. My point when I was saying that this is a well-known position which is supposed to be good for black, I wasn't saying it's dry. I'm just saying that I'd be surprised if white could get much of anywhere here against precise play, and nothing I've seen so far makes me change that opinion. Whoa.
We have liftoff.
Yeah, things are happening. I think Sergei realized that he needs to start taking drastic measures because he can't really play calmly anymore. There was a question on the Twitter feed, how does black attack the c3 pawn? Black does not attack the c3 pawn, he attacks the c4 pawn, yeah. Black's plan here is to play b6, bishop a6, and knight a5, and if this is achieved without white getting anywhere on the king side, the pawn on c4 just drops. There's not enough pieces on the board which can get to it for white.
Wow.
So g4 is a very, very
That's radical, isn't it? I mean,
very interesting approach. Yeah, and I'm curious.
Well, for a start, the first move that comes to mind is Queen H4. That's just the first move that I looked at.
Yeah, that's a decent option.
Just because I think, well, I quite like the fact that knight might block the f-file, at least temporarily. And I'm trying to be really tricky. And I think I'm achieving... I've also got... This could get very interesting.
Yeah, because knight f2, I think I can...
Yeah, I know, it's exactly the move I was looking at.
Yeah, this is interesting. Takes, king
well,
h1,
rook f6,
rook f6,
g5. You can take it off, no?
There's also this.
Oh, you can just take it with check. No, that's game over. That's it. That's game over.
That's actually...
That's game over. No, that's gone.
Hang on.
No.
Hang on.
No, that's gone. That's gone. We're going to play an f4 at some moment.
Check
f4.
and f4.
That's gone.
And now we want to play
And now we're
e5.
going e5. No, that's...
And
No, that's gone. EF.
but
Queen
that's not...
That's fantasy
First of all, we can... now I realize...
Well, Queen H4, yeah. I mean,
we didn't actually need to go for
yeah,
this brilliancy prize, but Queen H4 just collects the knight on H3. No, this is not going to happen. After Queen H4, I guess something else would... Yeah, maybe King G2. I mean, it looks a bit ugly, but perhaps there really isn't a better choice for white. But on the other hand, the Queen on H4, if we are forced to do something like f takes g, and let's say rook f1, queen f1, knight f6, white would very much like to play bishop d2, bishop e1 in one move here. He probably won't be allowed to.
My idea actually was to go e5 instead of knight f6. I don't know if that's it, if that's nonsense as well.
That actually looks very interesting, yeah.
Just
and I guess at some point white will sadly have to play queen f2 here.
Yeah, but then we've got our structure. And white takes
knight
knight f6 and...
But e5 gives white some options here. Let's say g5, and the knight goes to e4. This particular position is somewhat less clear than black would ideally like, I think. My question, the first thing I wanted to check is, what happens if we just take, and I don't even think we necessarily need to drive the queen to f1. I think that it's doing quite well on f1. I quite like knight f6 straight away. If g5, we will play knight e4, and it's, I think, a very comfortable outpost for this knight. And we want to play, well, e5 in some positions, and I don't know, knight f2 seems like a very natural continuation, covering the e4 square and preparing g5. I quite like g4. I think it was necessary, strangely enough, something like this. Maybe not, not exactly g4 straight away, but something like this I thought was already called for in this position, because white really can't afford any more waiting moves here. White needs to start doing stuff. And g4 is a very, very interesting option to disbalance the position somewhat. Of course, black can sort of ignore it, sort of thing, and play knight f6 without taking.
Yeah, that's also...
that's also possible. Let's say white can play g5, and then I will have to continue running, but I think d7 is a reasonably comfortable square for it, and now we want knight b6, knight a5. Yes, this is very slow, and it's only for one pawn on c4, but on the other hand, with the pawn on g5,
it's all closed,
with the pawn on g5, it will be very, very hard for white to organize anything concrete on the king's side. Something like, I don't know, e4 now. This will be sharpish, but I'm not entirely sure where this is going for white. White will have to show exactly what he means in a position like this, because the price of a move is going up here.
The price of poker is going up, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what? I just something deep inside my bones is saying there's something wrong with it.
If I somehow magically make the header disappear, and you look at this position and you don't know who's playing, do you still think black is better?
In this particular position.
Let's say I show you this position and I don't tell you the names.
Yeah.
Or better yet, I tell you this is a game Carlson Karjakin.
Yeah. I say no. I take black.
You still
I know.
take,
Yeah, I
you
do.
still take black. Okay.
I'm trying to make Queen H4 really work. I'm looking at all sorts of things, and I'm just not. Am I just not quite there? I don't know. It's close.
I'm not
I'd be really intrigued to see if Queen H4 just gets refuted in one move by the computer. But
he swapped on G4 and went Knight F6.
yeah,
That's the most natural option. But I'm not sure if I prefer this to
just
the
Knight
immediate
F6,
Knight F6
yeah.
because now I think Knight F2 has to be the move. Although I mean I've been wrong before already during today's broadcast. But I think Knight F2 is a very natural move. Because we want to play G5 and we want to have, in some lines, the E4 square available to the knight. Other way of doing things would be to play. White would like to play Bishop D3 and G5 here, but obviously Bishop D3 runs into E5 and the whole kingside starts hanging. So
yeah.
let's take a moment and consider the options available to white apart from Knight F2. The immediate G5 has to be calculated, but after Knight E4 both C3 and G5 are hanging, so I'd be surprised if that worked. But let's put this on the board for a second and check. G5 Knight E4. I want to take on F8. You probably have to take with the queen because although King F8 is a legal alternative, but it looks a bit dodgy, but maybe this is actually possible because it's very important that the pawn on G5 is hanging. Bishop D3, knight takes G5, there are no checks available. White probably has to play something like Queen H5, and then we will take on H3 and play Queen G5 check. It looks, if White already had the bishop on D2 and a rook on F1, this would look threatening, but here I think Black is beginning first, like something like this might be quite promising for Black.
Yeah.
Sort of going on a direct counterattack.
Yeah.
So King F8 actually is a very legal alternative, and if Queen F1 check, King G8 and Queen F4, we can take on C3. Bishop D3 and play E5, and once again this seems to have collapsed in on itself for White. So G5 Knight E4 seemingly does not quite work. So what else is available to White here? I think, well, Knight F4 is it's an okay looking move, but you're sort of inviting E5, which I think is Black's plan anyway. So I don't think White should play in that fashion. I think and this is also it's a somewhat thematic thing. With the knight on F6, a knight on F2 looks very natural because there's this knight opposition, so to speak. You're trying to control the same squares. You're trying to fight for the same squares. So knight F2 is a good pairing to knight F6, so to speak. But on the other hand, it's a move which you're going somewhat backwards in a position where you have just announced that you're trying to change the course of the game drastically. You're trying to create something interesting on the king side, and then making a move which is at least partly a defensive move is maybe not the most attractive option, but it keeps White's position somewhat connected. There are weaknesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
G4 is a potential target. The knight on E4 will attack, half the set on the queen side. So you want to safeguard your position against that. And once again, we've just played G4 and then we start talking about safeguarding our position. It feels a bit wrong, but
often things that feel a bit wrong are right, though, aren't they, Peter?
yes.
Oh well.
Yes.
At least in my experience. Let's go to Nakamura Mamedyarov. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, this one.
Because this has got a bit warm as well.
This one exploded.
Well, let's go to Bishop E4 because this is where
Yeah, they did get to the position I described earlier. Black went knight G7, castles Bishop E4. Hikaru went rook E1, which is a very, very natural overprotection move. The pawn on E5, as I mentioned earlier, is a constant source of worry. So the rook belongs on E1 definitely in this position. And here Shakrihar made a move
Really interesting.
I did not really consider much. He went queen b4, hitting the pawn on b2. The point of this is, you know, an amateur would protect the pawn by playing b3.
Right.
But now the knight on d4 obviously will be much harder to keep, because you know white needs the pawn on c3, not b3. And if rook b1, once again playing c3 becomes slightly less attractive for further, you know, for future in the future, because once white plays c3, the rook will be under threat. Maybe even immediately playing something like queen b6 makes sense. Although this kind of raises the question, why not queen b6 straight away if you want to put it on b6? This was always also an option.
I think it's because here you can go queen d2.
Yeah, that probably is true, but that also holds true for this position. So maybe black shouldn't hurry with queen b6. Maybe black will make some kind of a waiting move, like I don't know, h6 or g6 to try to improve his position on the king side. Anyway, Hikaru wasn't in the mood to start defending his pieces in this game, so he went a3 straight away, inviting black to take on b2. Which, I mean, having played queen
you
before,
have to do it.
Having played queen before, you can't really not take on b2. It would feel ridiculous. Rook b1, queen a3, and rook takes b7. And now for the price of one pawn, white managed to activate his pieces somewhat, to destroy black's queen side, make black's queen side feel slightly shaky. And basically, he is trying to use the fact that the king is still on f8. And is 2 moves away even from relative safety of g7, and even on g7 you can imagine some situation in which, let's say, the queen once black plays g6 and king g7, you can aim for perhaps queen d2, queen f4, queen f6 in some positions. It's not entirely safe even there, but it's 2 moves away from that. So black took on f3, which is a very sensible idea. You want to the knight on d4, apart from the rook on b7, which is a very nice piece, white's play is centered around this beautiful knight on d4, which controls a lot of squares, which is kind of the basis of the white's position here. So black is trying to swap one or possibly even both knights here. Hikaru recaptured with a knight. I think bishop takes f3 was also a possibility, of course, here, but I guess he did not like the idea of trading off all of his knights, and I'm not sure in which fashion black should approach this, because currently there's a reasonably big threat, I think, of knight takes c6 and c4, which has to be addressed in some way.
Yeah. I
thought about just taking knight g4, queen d4, and playing knight f5. But after queen f4, g4 is a very unpleasant threat. And also the king begins, you know, it feels a bit unprotected on f8 there. There aren't enough pieces around covering it. I mean, you can play something like h5 here maybe, but this feels this is actually bishop takes d5 is also a threat. This feels very loose. So
I wonder what was the idea then. Bishop takes f3.
Queen c3 or queen c5, but I don't know. Queen c5, I think white can take. Knight b3 is also an option, but I wanted to check this out. Let's say take. If we take with the queen, you can play queen b1, creating an unpleasant threat of queen b4, and also after something like queen c5, white can play c4.
Just play c4 anyway.
Play c4, and queen takes c4 probably loses on the spot to rook c1, and white has too many pieces joining the attack. So this is very dangerous. I'm curious as to why he did not take with the bishop. It seemed like at least a very valid alternative, but Hikaru did take with the knight, and now I think it's somewhat easier for black to, because nothing is hanging and c4 is not that big of a threat currently, black actually does have a tempo to spend
just
on
I
safeguarding.
like queen c3 here, just controlling some squares, maybe
Queen
threatening.
c3 is a very
And you know, you've got A5, A4,
yeah, just
A3.
briefly, I want to show you that what I discussed earlier.
Yeah, and
that actually
that's a problem.
that actually is a problem for
Yeah.
black, although maybe not an insurmountable one. I mean, the threats do exist, but maybe black can just calmly play rook hf8, because e7 is protected by the queen and a3, so queen f6, king g8 does not actually win any material.
No.
But black is somewhat stuck. I mean, there's no mate that I can see, but even something like h4, aiming to play h5, h6, is not going to be very easy to meet. So what else is there? In this position, as you said, you can play queen c3, which I think might perhaps even force white to drive it away by playing rook b3.
But then we've got the rook off the 7th, right?
Yeah,
And we
but
can
then-
just play queen c5. And
Yeah, another option obviously would be to continue hitting, trying to exchange as many pieces as possible. You can play rook b8, pretty much, I think, forcing rook takes b8, knight takes b8. And
Hikaru's got a bit of a problem here, hasn't he? Because if he one inaccuracy, a pawn's a pawn, and it's an a pawn, and you know, if the attack dies,
yeah,
it's a
no,
pawn,
I think
right?
I think white will have enough compensation here after something like maybe c4. Still, I don't think white should be worse, but so many pieces come off that I think black should be able to hold this. Let's for a second switch to this game, because it became very interesting.
Look at that.
And also somewhat confusing, I have to say.
Rook. I have to just gather my. Let me just take a drink of my apple juice before I try and tackle this one, because
But
what's
there's
going
no
on?
sound apparently.
I can't.
For those of you who can still hear us, we hope you will continue being able to hear us. If there is no sound, we apologize, and we'll try to fix that as soon as possible. What's going on?
Sorry, what's going on here? So I assume that the. No, I don't understand anything.
This is a very, very interesting move. Basically, if you take with the queen the rook on for black, mainly I think it's a protection move. You stop rook takes f2 more than anything else. You stop rook, and if king f7, I think he wants to take on c8. And now the point is, if you take with the rook, white takes on c5, and rook f2 g2 is illegal because of the pin.
What a move!
Yeah. So after rook f7, what are the options available to black? Is there anything else? Because I think in this position, bishop takes f2 might actually hold. But after king h1, it's a bit awkward for black, because, and also it kind of reminds me of a certain game I played in Tromsø, which I
I was going to bring that up, actually.
I tried to block out of my mind.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
That won't happen again. It's all right.
Mainly because I
You probably won't play her again,
I
right?
probably won't play Anna in the foreseeable future, but not because I will never ever lose a game to her again. Maybe queen c4 just holds, no?
Well, I think you're asking the wrong man. Does it hold? What's going on? I
Let's
don't
try and
understand
calculate. The rook is hanging. It has no really good squares. You can play rook b1, but I thought I might even maybe take queen takes c4, because rook b7 I can take on b7 and give mate along the first. It's very important that I can still control the first. And if queen f4 check, I can just play king g7, I think. And now queen e5 check is probably a perpetual. And if white takes on f2, rook d1 is still mate.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to me like king f7 could be a draw. Let's see if we're missing anything. Is there? Hang on a second. Queen f4 check is probably a very bad move, because king g7, bishop c8, and now we can once again take with the rook.
Yeah.
Queen e5 check, king h6, and I'm guessing black wins. Because there are no more checks, and queen c5 is mate on 3 once again. Yeah?
I'm trying to find a really clever move after rook takes. I feel like I've got one move to. Just after rook, I don't even want to take that rook. I want to do something else.
Yeah, but you don't really have that many options here. You can't really afford. I mean, there aren't any quiet moves available to white in this position. You can't activate the rook, and the queen f4 check we just looked at. Queen f4 check might. Well, I mean, I think after king g7 you have to start giving the perpetual straight away, and maybe you're still in time not to lose. Which actually makes me wonder if I can play king g8 so that this doesn't happen. But then after bishop c8, rook f2, white has bishop e6 check, which probably holds. Although I'm not so sure, actually. I don't know, maybe it doesn't. Rook f2, bishop takes f2, and regardless of what you take with, I will swap the queens off.
Oh, that's cute. Queen
f2,
queen
b6.
b6.
This probably is a lost pawn endgame as far as we get.
Absolutely, yeah. Wow.
So I think queen f4, king g8, if I'm not missing something very, very big, this might actually be losing. So bishop takes c8.
What was wrong with rook takes f2 here? Oh, queen takes c5, right.
Yeah, rook f2, queen c5 loses, but
yeah.
we can take with the bishop, as I thought suggested. I think rook f2, queen f. I mean, rook f2, rook f2, bishop b7 is something I considered. But now, if oh no, this actually doesn't work. I thought I can do this, but queen f1 is check.
Check.
So, wow. But I can play queen b1. I mean, I wanted to play for a win, but if I want a draw, I can do this.
Minimum draw.
Yeah, and also, I mean, after rook g2, there will be nothing better than rook bishop d5 check, which is also, let's put it mildly, not a winning attempt. So this does not make much sense for white, and there are no other checks here, and no ways to even threaten a check. So it is king h1, and now after queen c4, what am I missing? What am I missing, and does white have anything better than the perpetual along the f4, e5 squares?
Is it perpetual check?
Why not?
Queen f4. Can I go king e8? Can I be outrageous?
That's an interesting question. Just briefly, let's point out that king g8 actually loses because bishop e6, yeah. And now the rook on g2 suddenly becomes available for black. I mean for white. So king e8.
I know it's an outrageous.
That's curious, but that actually forces white to move this rook somewhere. It's hanging, and you can't. No, hang on. I have bishop d7 check.
Yeah, but now maybe I just
run.
Yeah.
But run how?
Well, run forest. Actually, I was thinking maybe going king e7 first.
King e7. I was planning to play queen g5 check.
Ah,
and
look
at you quizzically. Look at you quizzically, and now you have to go to the f file, which is not something you want.
No, I was trying to be. I only saw queen e5 check. But
beautiful.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't this nice? Bishop b5, and now suddenly this is check. No, I think king e8, bishop d7 is not a winning attempt. Black might hold after rook d7, queen f2, but you wouldn't want to subject yourself to this because queen f8 is a rather big threat. And hang on, rook
f7 wins
f7
on the spot.
Oh.
Rook f7 wins.
Resigns.
Resigns.
Hello. So king e8.
If king e8, if this happens, I'm going to be mighty proud of myself.
Hang on a second. We haven't finished calculating.
I know. I'm getting ahead of myself.
You're getting ahead of yourself.
You know, I'm mildly excited about the fact that I saw king e8.
Let's have a look. Basically, if bishop d7 is illegal, which it seems to be, there's also hang on, queen e5, king d8. Yeah. Is this any good for white? Looks very, very risky now because
I like the fact that your queen is no longer attacking my rook.
Yes, that's a very valid observation. Hang on, there's just so much stuff going on here.
I'm
doing this live on air is a bit confusing.
It is hard, isn't it? People don't give us enough credit. I feel like at the moment I'm looking at this position. You know, when you go, I don't know if you've ever had an operation or been given not the oxygen. What is it? To make you pass out.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
Long
That
time
moment you wake up, you're dazed and confused, Led Zeppelin-esque, and then
also you have tubes sticking out of your
yeah,
throat,
and then you wake up and you don't really. I feel like that's what's going on in this position. I feel completely. I feel like I don't really grasp what I should be. It's kind of.
I wanted to ask you if you could, as a personal favour to me, continue talking for the next 3 minutes so I could try calculate variations.
Right. You calculate and I'll talk to you guys out there. Remember, you can get in touch with us here. We are by far the most interactive webcast available covering this tournament, actually covering any tournament here at Chess24. We would like to hear from you because we do this for you guys. We're chess fans, and so you can send us your tweets at the hashtag C24Live. A lot of people are contributing already. Make sure you do too. We can't read out every tweet, of course, but we will pick the most interesting ones. And of course, I'm sat alongside one of the greatest players of our generation, Peter Svidler, who is
Thank you very much, Lawrence.
It's true.
I'm giving up on the idea of trying to calculate anything without moving the pieces.
I think we've had a tweet from none other than Mr. Jan Gustafsson, Grandmaster Jan Gustafsson, one of the finest endgame technicians you'll ever. He hates it when I say that. That really irritates him. Yeah. No, he's one of the biggest opening theoreticians. Well, one of the biggest.
I called him vase breaker extraordinaire yesterday, and that didn't get any traction at all in the Twitter sphere. But people don't really understand just how good he is at Plants vs Zombies.
Yeah, he's really obsessed with that game, and it's highly irritating being around him when he's playing with that.
I am actually a student of that game as well, so for me it's a masterclass. I watch it with I'm trying to learn stuff because I'm streets and streets ahead of behind him in PVZ. Anyways. In this position, I think we can rule out Bishop D7 as far as I can see, and Queen E5, King D8 I don't really like. I'm not, I can't be 100% sure this is bad, but I don't see why we're driving the king towards the bishop it will very much like to take. So this leaves us with rook moves. Both in this position we have rook A1 and rook B1, and also we have 2 rook moves in this position. And those need to be covered. After rook b1, as I mentioned earlier, I quite like queen takes e4 because it's such a multi-purpose move. You take away all those checking squares where white no longer has a check on f4 ever again. And we also control b7, and you cannot play a rook b7 because of queen takes b7, as I pointed out earlier. So rook b1, queen e4, I think black is at the very least fine. I don't see why he should be worried here. I'm not sure if he is much better or anything, but it seems to me he has no reason to worry at all. And if rook a1, the problem with rook a1 is that this does not even create a threat.
Yeah.
And for that reason, we can, for instance, play queen d4, renewing the attack on the rook, and also creating a very big threat of rook d1, and taking the dark squares under control at the same time. So after queen f4, king g7, there are no more meaningful checks. You can check from c7, but now let's say h8 becomes safe. And once the rook comes back to d1, we can f1, we can play rook g1. I mean, bishop a6 saves the game for the moment, I think. But once again, black can take on f1 and take on e4 and pretend he's slightly better even for a while. So I think without queen f4 check, the rook moves are not dangerous. And after queen f4 check, once again, let's start by saying that as far as I can see, king g7 makes a draw, because I don't think white will find anything better than queen e5 check, king h6, queen f4 check. I think this is a logical continuation from here. And the question then becomes, can black play for a win by playing king e8, a move you so brilliantly suggested? And here, once again, we have to check out rook b1 and rook a1. Rook a1 here, I don't really see the point of. I mean, once again, you're putting it on a square where it can get very easily attacked. Maybe rook f1 is still fine for white, but this is you know, not very critical. The critical move is rook b1, I think. And now maybe white can, in some positions, create some threats by maybe giving this check on d7 and then include. I mean, black will take the bishop on d7, but then the rook will have a check on either b7 or b8. So black maybe has to be somewhat careful here. But one thing I would like to suggest is that if black is worried about all this, he has queen b3. Hitting the rook on b1 yet again, and creating yet again the threat of rook d1. And after queen e5, I think I can go king d8.
Why not?
Well, this is slightly trickier because there are some checks available, but here I will go rook c2. It's not life and death. And there aren't really any better checks. I mean, you can play queen f6, king takes c8, and perhaps there will be a perpetual because the black king cannot cross the b file because the queen then will be taken with check. But then again, we are trying to find a draw with white.
Yeah, that's not.
We are at no point whatsoever are we looking for white advantage. I think we are basically trying to make sure we don't lose. While we were doing all this rambling, you know, attempt at analysis,
I don't think it's an attempt.
Yeah, king takes f7 and bishop takes c8 has appeared on the board. So let's see what Fabiano thinks about this position. Now I expect he will take on f2, and then we'll see what happens. Briefly, Shakrihar is a very energetic player, and
I actually really like this.
Instead of trying to you know, play it safe and keep things under wraps, he went h6 after knight takes f3. He went h6, and after queen g2, which is a very natural move, trying to get the queen to f4, which, as I pointed out, was a very decent square for this piece. He went g5. This is a very interesting way of treating this position, because the f4 square is not taken away from the queen, and black's pieces are all protecting each other. King g7 will happen next move if white does nothing, and then I mean, black's plan here is to play king g7 and then play rook h b8, and if this happens, black is just a pawn up. Structurally doing excellently well, because the pawn on e5 is still a weakness which can be exploited later on. I've only just realized I can actually use. You can use red. I can use other colors. Go for it. Yes. Treat yourself. So I think the most critical move in this position has to be h4. Regardless of what's going on after that move, I think you need to make it to prevent black from achieving his ideal setup. And after g4? After g4, you will have to think about your options. There is knight h2. There is also knight d4. I think queen f4 is too adventurous. Although, yeah, I don't really believe you can start sacrificing pieces in this position. Black's position is too solid. But let's say knight h2. Well, even here, g3 is not out of the question. Not at all. But yeah, this makes sense. This makes sense. I thought I would just play knight g4, but knight g4 doesn't really create any threats, and the king on f2 will feel knight f5 and uneasy. Yeah. And queen g3 checks. I mean, game still continues. Queen c5 check is also. But I quite like knight f5. Knight f5 creates a lot of ideas for black. Maybe something like queen c5 check. Queen c5, and I wanted to go king f3, but this is well, you can go king f3. That's all right. I probably have to. I'm going to probably mate you, Mr. Svidler. I probably have to, but I mean, can I checkmate you? It's not really. It feels like it's going slightly wrong for you. I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing here. Although, actually, this position I do not dislike for white, surprisingly, because the knight is headed towards f6. I'm only one pawn down, and the bishop on d3 actually does an excellent job of cementing white's position and keeping things under control. And black is still somewhat discoordinated. This is not as ridiculous as it looks, but maybe I had an improvement. But Yeah, I don't know. Maybe knight d4 is saner.
Yeah, but...
But still, I mean,
Well...
I quite like this idea, even if... No, but here, yeah, here it's a bit trickier. If you play g3 here, I can take maybe on c6, gf2, king f2, knight takes c6 and queen f4.
Why aren't we taking on d4 and playing knight f5? That's my...
Well, you can do that.
I mean, no, maybe I want to flick in. Maybe I want to flick in g3 first.
Yeah, that's maybe maybe that's a better idea. You don't want to. This isn't a valuable pawn, not because it's a pawn, but simply because on g3 it's a huge nuisance to white.
Yeah.
So, but now something maybe like bishop h5.
Oh, that's a sneaky move.
Yeah, that's
a very sneaky move.
That position is very, very unclear and potentially actually quite good for white, I think, because if nothing else, I maybe want to take on g3 and then play rook f1, and the pawn on f7 will come under severe pressure here, and we're still only talking one pawn down for white.
That's true.
It's not as if white had to pay a huge price for this. I quite like h4, and I really think this needs to be played, and black will have to settle on a move here.
Very tricky stuff.
A question from Philip Shiena, a regular.
We like our regulars here.
Yeah. He's asking if we consider a pawn on e5 a strong pawn or something Hikaru will have trouble hanging on to later on. It depends. I mean, it somewhat cuts black's position in half, but on the other hand, I mean, if black manages to settle down and finish development, it definitely is a weakness. In this structure, especially in this material, with this material on the board, when white does not have a second knight or a dark squared bishop, the pawn on e5 can be attacked by both knights, and it will require a constant attention if, let's say, this game gets to an endgame, which currently seems somewhat less than likely. But generally speaking, the pawn on e5, once the d and c pawns are traded off, is I would say more of a source of worry than a strength. We are at these crossroads in the game between Radjabov and Caruana.
So we're expecting queen c4.
Yeah,
right?
I like queen c4. I see nothing wrong with it, but we'll see what Fabiano thinks about this position. And we had moves in the central game of the day. Sergei did.
All of his games are central game of the day, aren't
yes,
they?
that's
probably what happens when he's world champion,
things,
right?
Yeah.
We've got a tweet here from Malikarjun Kara. Karjakin Magnus. Look at the time on both their clocks. Opponents are probably too scared of Magnus.
Yeah, I wouldn't actually mind having a look at.
Yeah, let's get a little time update on that, Peter. Yeah, because Sergei must have taken 20 minutes on bishop e2, in my opinion.
Yeah. And so Sergei has 32 minutes against 1 hour 20 for Magnus. Yeah, that's a disadvantage. Let's put it this way. And also, since then, yeah, I'm not. Yeah, this is not enjoyable.
No, this
is not enjoyable. This brings to mind the famous Fischer-Spassky-Fischer games.
Yeah, no,
I mean, this structure is not particularly fun for white, even with the pawn on g2.
Yeah.
With the pawn on g4.
Oh my goodness. Is he going to have to go g5?
I think he absolutely has to go g5 straight away.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can't allow knight h7, knight g6.
I mean, if you allow knight g6 and knight h7, but even just knight g6 alone, I mean, if black gets control of the g5 and f4 squares, that's going to be ugly. So I think he more or less has to play g5.
Yeah.
To which, I mean, it's possible to ignore, but I think black will just take, and play something like knight h7.
Bishop h4.
And after bishop h4...
Maybe you can go g5.
I mean, g5 is legal, but also, I mean, what if just queen 8, bishop h5, maybe?
Yeah, that's...
So let's put it somewhere else. There's rook f4, kind of asking you to go bishop g3, and now we could consider knight g6 even. I mean, even something like this, I don't think you can, I mean, maybe you can take, but you don't really want to. And if bishop h5, I can play rook f6, and I solved some of those problems. The knight is about to enter via f4. And also I can play rook f6 maybe here in order to play rook h6 after bishop h4 and finally unpin. And I mean, this position I would say is probably winning for black, but bishop h4 is a howler. Something like bishop g4, knight g4 is probably stronger, but let's say knight g4, black takes, and goes knight g6. Black is 2 moves away from total domination. If he gets, let's say, bishop d7 and queen e7 in, and the rook joins via f8, if you get these 3 moves in, you can resign with white. Because all of those knights will come in. This one will come via g5, this will come via, and I mean, the king on g1 is just such a horrible piece here. And white's position is kind of in ruins. And
I just don't like the way,
yeah, I was, you know, my initial reaction to that tweet about people being afraid of Magnus was to dismiss it, to be honest, not because you know, somebody like Karjakin, he has won games against Magnus in his life. He has had good positions, and he you know, considers himself a challenger. You know, he's of very much of the same generation as Magnus, and you know, your first reaction is to say no, he's not afraid. Why would he start the game with white against Magnus being afraid? But to be honest with you, his play after knight h3 f5 does not feel like he's feeling particularly confident today. It feels as if, you know, he had a very set idea of how Magnus will react to 4f3 based on what Magnus did against Vishy and against Hikaru in Zurich. And when Magnus perhaps somewhat surprised him with knight h5 f5, he switched to you know, it's I don't want to be too critical of Sergei's play. I mean, chess is a difficult game, and playing Magnus is not easy. And you know, I'm sitting here, you know, in a comfortable studio, passing judgment on very, very strong players. It's not a particularly comfortable place for me to be honest. But I have to say that, you know, it seems to me like he's constantly torn between aiming for a sharp game, which I think 4f3, you do not play 4f3 if you want a quiet life without problems. This is an option you take if you want a full-blooded struggle, if you want to fight for a win, if you want to sort of announce that you are fighting for first in this tournament, because you obviously can't fight for first in this tournament if you are not trying to beat Magnus. He will just run away with it. Somebody needs to stop him for him not to sort of cruise to a victory in this tournament. So f3 says, I've come here to challenge your domination. I've come here to give you a game and to make you work. And then he goes e3, bishop e2, and castles, which says, I no longer like my position very much, so I'm switching to this holding
safe
pattern.
mode.
Yeah, holding pattern.
Pattern.
And then after knight c6, he realizes yet again that the holding pattern is kind of drawing him towards a position he will not like, and he switches back again to some kind of sharp play on the king side, which was not perhaps. Although I mean, I did like g4 when it happened, and I'm not taking that back. I think maybe the position called for something like this already by this point, but it seems like he's a bit torn between those two modes of play. You know, playing you know, quiet game, try to play, you know, as risk-free as possible, and playing for a win. And now he finds himself, g5, hg, bishop g5 happened. He finds himself in a very, very unpleasant position. I like knight h7, but also knight g6 straight away is okay. The reason I suggested knight h7 is that I would like to unpin this knight first, because now to play knight h7, black will have to waste the tempo on some queen move.
Maybe even knight g4 here, right?
Yeah, and also something like this, using the pin straight away might be a decent idea. Although, I mean, black can play something like knight f4 in reply, and after knight f6 take with the rook, and I mean, there will be options like this available to black at any point. You know, knight h7 is an attempt to get a lot. Getting a little bit here should not be.
Queen e8
or queen e8 straight away.
Just to Oh goodness! Well, I think Karjakin's in for a long one there. I don't think.
Yeah,
Magnus
people are demanding you tell them what brand of shirt are you are wearing today. This has been asked twice already. So
this is I actually got this shirt, believe it or not, in India.
Okay.
During the match, and I think it's a Tommy Hilfiger shirt, and then big thanks to Tanya Sachdev, who came with me to pick it out. I needed a
I'm somewhat sartorially challenged today, but that basically is because we had a bit of a Scana Darkly wardrobe malfunction before the start of the transmission. If there are any Philip K. Dick fans out there, you know, I'm wearing a somewhat stripy polo shirt, which would make me look like I'm wearing this suit, which changes my appearance every 10 seconds, which was not an effect I was going for. So it had to be covered up.
It's a good. I like the film. Robert Downey Jr., right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah. I mean, I read the book when I was 15.
I heard the book is a lot better than the film.
Yeah, and it made me a Philip K. fan for life. But
very, very distressing kind of.
I like this.
You like
this
distressing
kind of literature,
stuff,
but yeah, that's me. Anyways, Fabiano perhaps wisely decided that there's really no point in trying to win the position he probably sees for the first time in his life. And I would need to look at the times, but I think Radjabov was playing rather fast and confidently up to that point, so we can assume. I mean, he took some time on rook takes b7, but from that moment on, I think he blitzed out almost all of those moves. So in Hikaru's shoes, I think you normally assume you're playing somebody who has this prepared, and he probably wouldn't enter this line if black was winning after king e8, so why bother? You can play king g7, and now queen e5, king h6 is a draw, but I mean, a draw with black is a decent result. And the problem with the rook b1 lines, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, the Grunfeld is a fine opening, I still enjoy playing it, but in the more forcing lines of the Grunfeld, you do end up having to memorize lines to make a draw. But that's modern chess in pretty much any opening anyway, so you can't really complain. Hikaru did play h4. I'm very happy about that. Always good to say that somebody absolutely has to play a move, and then somebody does play it. Yeah, it's a good feeling.
That is true.
And Magnus played queen e8.
He played queen e8.
Yeah, which is a very, very good move as well.
So, what are your based on the play so far? Your predictions of the day: Radjabov, Caruana draw.
Seems to me like it might even finish sooner rather than later.
Hikaru, Nakamura, Mamedyarov, if you had to bet on a result. I'm going to go for a black win.
No, I don't think Hikaru will lose this position. No, I'm choosing between a Hikaru win and a draw, and I'm leaning towards a draw, but actually I quite like his chances. I think he recovered quite well from yesterday. I think he is showing good spirit today, and this position suits him. This position suits him much more than the one he had yesterday. I mean, he has, pieces jumping all over the place, and great compensation for the pawn. I think objectively black should be fine. It's not that's not to say that I think this position is already better for white. I think the equilibrium has not been breached as yet.
Okay.
But I think Hikaru is the one enjoying himself more, and this counts for something.
And what about then game of the day, Karjakin, Carlson, your countryman versus the world champion?
He's going to struggle. He might hold this. It's not hopeless yet, but he's going to struggle. I mean, it's objectively a reasonably unpleasant position for white. He's also down on the clock, and there is no way he is enjoying what's going on. I mean, he is, quite obviously a good enough player to realize that something has gone wrong at some point. This is not how you yeah, I mean, it's very...
If you had to give a percentage out of 10 times.
On current form, when he gets a position like this, it's so difficult to bet against the Magnus win.
Okay, all right. Well, I think this would be a good moment for us again to take a very, very quick break. We will be
back in a bit. Yeah.
We'll be back in a bit, and stay with us. Remember to send us your tweets, and remember to enjoy every minute that you have.
Very good.
Very
Lars.
good, right?
Yeah.
That was pretty deep. No? I think so.
You always are.
Not always, actually. Take it.